Look YouTube, welcome back to a new video with Rams fan YT. In today's video, we're looking at the very upsetting topic of administration, with Derby County being discussed at the very end. So please do wait around for that to see my personal view as a fan of what is going on there. But we're going back to 2009 for this part 3, starting off with Darlington. In February 2009, Darlington again went into administration, triggering an automatic 10-point deduction, without which they would have again reached the playoffs. Fundraising efforts kept the club going, but when no buyer was found for the club by a May deadline, the administrators made the majority of the first team squad available for transfer and cut staff numbers to a minimum. On the 20th of May, Houghton returned to the club as chairman, appointed former Middlesbrough boss Colin Todd as manager, and brokered an agreement which led to the club coming out of administration, and ownership passed to local businessman Raj Singh, and enabling it to compete in the 2009-10 season without any points deduction. Southampton 2009. In April 2009, Southampton's parent company was placed in administration. A 10-point penalty was imposed, but as the team was already being relegated due to finishing second from bottom of the Football League Championship, this points deduction had to apply to the 2009-10 season. By the end of May, the club was unable to meet its staff wages and asked employees to work unpaid as a gesture of goodwill. The administrator warned that the club faced imminent bankruptcy unless a buyer was found. In June, Administrator Mark Fry confirmed negotiations with two groups of investors, followed by confirmation that the club had been sold to an overseas buyer, owned and controlled by Marcus Lieber. Lieber brought in Italian businessman Nicola Cortese to look after the club's business interests on his behalf. In July 2009, with the club in the control of new owner Watte was sacked as head coach, and Alan Pardew was appointed as the new first team manager. Stockport County 2009. In April 2009, Stockport County was placed into administration due to a loan to a creditor of around £300,000 and a tax debt of £250,000 to Her Majesty's Revenue and Customs. 2 months later, County's administrator, Leonard Curtis, announced terms had been arranged with the Melrose Consortium, headed by ex-Manchester City player Jim Melrose, for the sale of the club. In July, administrators agreed to accompany a voluntary arrangement with the previous shareholders and creditors. The Melrose Consortium bid was rejected by the Football League, however, in March 2010. A new consortium, a 2015 group, was given exclusivity to work towards a takeover of the club. The purchase of Stockport County by the 2015 group was approved by the Football League in May 2010, with a takeover announced in June. Chester City 2009. Beset by an ongoing transfer embargo, Chester continued to struggle throughout the 2008-9 season, and a 2-1 home defeat by Darlington on the final day of the season sealed Chester's demise and return to non-league football after 5 years back in the Football League. 2 weeks after the final match, the club entered administration. The following month, creditors voted in favour of a rescue package by Stephen Vaughan's family, ahead of the Football Conference Board's AGM, where the club was accepted into the Conference National with a 10-point deduction. Mark Wright was replaced as manager by Mick Wadsworth. In the summer of 2009, Chester City was placed into the hands of administrators with debts of £7 million, inclusive of Stephen Vaughan's £5.5 million investments, which incurred a 10-point penalty. This turn was increased to a 25-point penalty once the HMRC overturned the CVA. A potential buyer emerged over the summer when local fan Mike David Green sought to create a consortium with northern businessman Andy Jinks. However, any potential deal fell through due to Jinks's commitment issues. A new buyer was found for the club on the 26th of May 2009 in the shape of Chester City 2004 Limited, a company set up by former chairman Stephen Vaughan and his family. The FA withheld the transfer of the affiliation membership from Chester City Football Club to Chester City Football Club 2004 Limited, and on the eve of the new season, stopped Chester City Football Club playing the first game of the 2009-10 season away at Grays Athletic. This came less than 24 hours after the Football Conference released an interim press release stating Chester could take their place in the fifth tier of English football. The club reluctantly cut back on the Centre of Excellence youth training scheme by retaining only their youth team. Fans waited at the Diva Stadium for a meeting with Stephen Vaughan and other board representatives to find out the truth regarding the future, and showed their support for the club by meeting in the city at the time that they should be kicking off the new season. Chester City Football Club issued a press release on the 10th of August 2009 describing the meetings that took place between the club, FA and Football Conference regarding the transfer of the FA membership at the beginning of the 2009-10 season. They confirmed that the home match versus Gateshead Football Club had been called off by the Football Conference and that the FA had asked the other clubs to vote on whether Chester City should be allowed to continue in the division. The press release ended with, "We have now been informed that we must again await an FA decision which will be taken at some time on Thursday the 13th of August 2009 and can do no more than publicly express our ever-increasing frustration with the entire process." The FA granted the transfer of membership to Chester City Football Club 2004 Limited at 4 o'clock on the 13th of August 2009. On the 9th of February 2010, Chester City failed to fulfil a fixture at Forest Green Rovers. It was reported by the BBC that the players refused to get on the team bus, and the players had also threatened twice to strike following non-payment of wages. 3 days later, the Football Conference suspended Chester for 7 days, during which their fixtures were suspended. The suspension was to allow them to put their finances in order and respond to the charge of breaking 5 separate conference rules. The breaches include the abandoned game against Forest Green and the cancelling of a game due to an unpaid police bill. At a meeting of the Football Conference Board on the 18th of February, it was recommended that Chester be expelled from the league because the members of the board failed to be convinced that the club would fulfil its fixtures. The decision ultimately rested with the other member clubs. An independent valuation at the time valued the club at just £1. £1 rather. At this point, Chester remained anchored to the bottom of the Conference National on -3 points. The club was expelled following a vote at a general meeting between the member clubs of the league on the 20th of February at Neen Park. The results of the season so far were expunged from the record. On the 9th of March, the club submitted an application to join the Welsh Premier League, but the club was formally wound up in the High Court the following day. The club supporters group City Fans United announced that they were looking to reform in the lower divisions of English football hierarchy, with a CFU spokesman claiming the club would play football once again in the pre-season. Failing attendances had done the club no favours during its final few years. The club's average attendance had stood at nearly 3,000 in the 2005-06 season, but in the relegation season 3 years later, it fell below the 2,000 mark. In the club's final season, attendances averaged less than 1,300. The lowest attendance on the 19th of January was a mere 425, the lowest league attendance in the club's history in any division. And the attendance at the club's final home game on the 6th of February was 460. On the 25th of March 2010, it was announced that the CFU's new club would be called Chest FC and would play at the old club's Diva Stadium. The club began playing in July 2010 in time for the 2010-11 season and was placed in the Northern Premier League Division 1 North, 3 tiers below where Chester City would have been prior to their collapse. 3 successive promotions took Chester FC into the Conference Premier in 2013. Northwich Victoria 2009. On the 19th of May 2009, the club went into administration for the second time in 5 years, following a relegation from the Conference National. They owed around £500,000 in unpaid bills to creditors. They were threatened with a double relegation to the Northern Premier League as a result of this, but ultimately won an appeal to be placed in the Conference North for the 2009-10 season. The 2009-10 season saw Northwich achieve a mid-table finish, but due to the ongoing financial problems, the club were expelled from the league and placed in the Northern Premier League Premier Division. For months following their FA Cup campaign in 2009, the club was still owed at least £180,000 of its FA Cup and TV broadcasting money by the FA, which would have allowed the club to settle their remaining debts. The club received the money in December 2010, a welcome relief due to the adverse weather conditions which had affected football fixtures during the winter. Following the end of the 2009-10 season, most of the squad were placed on the transfer market in an effort to cut wage bills. By the start of the new season, only 3 players from the previous season remained in the squad. The reserve feeder team of Woodley Football Club became Northwich Villa, who played in Division 1 of the Cheshire Football League. Many of the squad for that season came through the new structure into the first team squad. Farsley Celtic 2009. The club's first season in the Conference National ended in relegation back to the Conference North. Financial problems led to the club being expelled from the league prior to the 2009-10 season, although they were readmitted shortly afterwards. And they subsequently went into administration and were expelled from the conference in March 2010 after being unable to fulfil their fixtures, before being disbanded on the 10th of March. The club was reformed as Farsley AFC and joined the Premier Division of the Northern Counties East League for the 2010-11 season. Salisbury City 2009. In the summer of 2009, Salisbury City Football Club faced bankruptcy, and in early September, the club was formally placed in administration. While still functioning as a football team, the Whites were fined and punished further by the football authorities with a deduction of points. From September 2009, Salisbury City Football Club was being run by Carl Fords and Michael Fortune, operating as agents and contracting for Portland Business and Financial Solutions. On the 19th of May 2010, the club was demoted 2 divisions to the Southern League Premier Division due to a breach of conference rules. The club admitted that contrary to the conditions agreed in order to come out of administration, it had missed the deadline to pay back a creditor, but hoped to reach the CVA on the 12th of June, 5 weeks after the deadline. An appeal was made, but on the 20th of June 2010, it was announced with the appeal having failed. Salisbury City Football Club will compete in the Southern League Premier Division for the coming 2010-11 season, 2 divisions below the Conference Premier League. The consortium of William Harrison Allen, Chris Bramall and Jeff Hooper took the club on and bailed them out of administration. Weymouth 2009. At the start of 2009, it was announced that Weymouth were in financial difficulties. It is suspected that Weymouth were £30,000 in debt, and on the 19th of January 2009, Chief Executive Gary Calder announced that Malcolm Curtis had resigned as a director and as chairman of Weymouth Football Club Limited. Crystal Palace 2010. Following their relegation, Simon Jordan was unable to put the club on a sound financial footing over the next few years. And in January 2010, Palace were once again placed into administration, this time by a creditor. Due to the Football League's regulations, the club were deducted 10 points, and the administrators were forced to sell key players, including Victor Moses and Jose Fonte. Neil Warnock had also departed as manager in the early part of 2010. Paul Hart took over as caretaker manager for the final few weeks of the season. Survival Championship was only secured on the final day of the season after a memorable 2-2 draw at Sheffield Wednesday, which was itself relegated as a result. During the close of that season, CPFC 2010, a consortium consisting of several wealthy fans, successfully negotiated the purchase of the club. They were led by Steve Parish, the vocal representative of the consortium of four that also included Stephen Browett, Jeremy Hosking, and Martin Long. Crucially, the consortium also secured the freehold of Selhurst Park and paid tribute to a fans' campaign which helped pressure Lloyds Bank into selling the ground back to the club. Portsmouth 2010. During the 2009-10 season, it had become apparent that the club's new owner, Balram Chainray, that Portsmouth were approximately £135 million in debt. So, to protect the club from liquidation, Chainray placed the club into administration on the 26th of February 2010, and the club appointed Andrew Andronikou, Peter Kubik, and Michael Keeley of accountancy firm UHY Hacker Young as administrators. This automatically incurred a 9-point penalty from the Premier League, which came into effect on the 17th of March and consigned the team to almost certain relegation, which was mathematically confirmed on the 10th of April 2010. On the 9th of April 2010, it was announced David Lampitt would be joining Portsmouth as their new CEO after he had worked a period of notice at the FA, his current employer. Portsmouth were relegated to the EFL Championship the following day, on the 10th of April 2010, after West Ham won. Portsmouth won their FA Cup semi-final match against Tottenham 2-0 after extra time the next day, with goals from Frederic Piccione and Kevin Prince Boateng winning the match. They faced Chelsea in the final at Wembley on the 15th of May 2010 and lost 1-0 to a goal from Didier Drogba. Despite being the FA Cup finalists, the club were denied a licence to play European football the following season in the UEFA Europa League. In May, Grant resigned as Portsmouth manager. On the 17th of June, the club's creditors voted for a company voluntary arrangement with an 81.3% majority. HMRC, Paul Hart, and the agent of Portsmouth midfielder Tommy Smith were the only ones to reject it. But HMRC appealed against the CVA due to the reduction of its considerable debt. On the 15th of July 2010, HMRC appealed against the proposed CVA on the last day before it would be formally agreed. The case was originally going to take place in October 2010, but after an appeal from the administrators at the club, it was set for the 3rd of August at the High Court in London. The case was heard by Mr. Justice Mann from the 3rd to 5th of August, where, having heard submissions from both sides, he turned down HMRC's appeal on all 5 counts it had put forward. HMRC decided not to appeal against the verdict, leaving Portsmouth's administrators to formally agree the CVA and bring the club out of administration. On the 17th of August, Balram Chainray completed his takeover of the club and passed the owners and directors fit and proper test. Plymouth Argyle 2011. On the 21st of February, the club issued a notice of intention to appoint an administrator and were immediately docked 10 points by the Football League, which dropped them to the bottom of the League One table after poor results continued. The club officially went into administration on the 4th of March, and Brendan Guilfoyle of P&A Partnership was appointed to run the club and search for a buyer. James Brent's Acheron Group agreed to a deal with the administrators to buy the club, with Peter Ridsdale also confirming that he would leave the club when the deal had been completed. The Football League then banned any loan signings until the deal had been completed on the 6th of October. Further problems occurred with the administrators threatening to quit the club. The PFA agreed a repayment plan for the employees to receive their wages, as well as former manager Peter Reid agreeing to a deal. Argyle also agreed to a deal to sell Home Park back to Plymouth Council on the 14th of October for £1.6 million, and they had to pay £135,000 a year for rent. On the 28th of October, the deal with James Brent was approved, and he would take his seat at the club when Home Park was sold. Plymouth officially exited administration on the 31st of October after the takeover was complete. Rushden Diamonds 2011. Chairman Keith Cousins resigned and was replaced by Gary Cowder and Liam Besant. Little over a month later, Vice Chairman Helen Thompson resigned from her position. Also, while by March, just 3 months after taking charge, Cowder himself quit the club. As the season drew to an end, it was also revealed that the club was under a transfer embargo and that only the intervention of the PFA prevented the Diamonds players refusing to play a game against Mansfield Town in March due to unpaid wages. The club were expelled from the Conference National on the 11th of June 2011 because their unstable financial position meant they could not guarantee being able to complete all their fixtures in the 2011-12 season. The club faced a winding up petition lodged by HM Revenue and Customs in the week commencing the 13th of June 2011, with reported debts of £750,000. An application in June to move to enter the Southern Football League was unsuccessful, and the club had entered administration on the 7th of July 2011. Fans immediately announced a desire to create a new fan-owned club called AFC Rushden Diamonds, who would field a senior side in 2012. The new club started in the United Counties League Division 1. Darlington 2012. A little more than 2 months after the start of the 2011-12 season, Singh placed the club into administration for the third time in less than a decade. A number of players were released and allowed to join other clubs for nominal fees in January, before interim manager Craig Liddell and the remaining player staff had their contracts terminated by Darlington administrator. 2 days later, the club was spared from liquidation after a last-minute injection of funding by supporters groups. Enough funds were raised for Darlington to complete the season, but relegation was confirmed with 3 matches remaining. On the 3rd of May 2012, the club was taken over by DFC 1883 Limited, with the intention of moving into community ownership. Because it failed to agree a creditor's voluntary agreement, the club was expelled from the FA and was eventually wound up in the High Court. DFC 1883 Limited immediately formed a new club because the club proposed to play at a ground without required grading for the Northern Premier League. The new club was placed in the Northern League Division 1 by the FA. Martin Gray was appointed manager. An appeal against the new club not being treated as a continuation of the old club was rejected, confirming that the club was to be treated as a new club and won't be able to play under the name Darlington FC. The new owners opted to name the new club Darlington 1883. In February 2013, the club became 100% fan and community owned after the Darlington Football Community Interest Company, representing around 800 members, had taken a 52% stake. The supporters club held 15% and individual fans held the remaining 33%. The new ownership were committed to paying off debts incurred under the previous owners. 5 months later, the club made a final payment on tax owed to HMRC. Portsmouth 2012. On the 23rd of November 2011, a Europe-wide arrest warrant was issued for Portsmouth owner Vladimir Antonov by Lithuanian prosecutors as part of an investigation into alleged asset stripping at Lithuanian bank Bankas Snoras, which was 68% owned by Antonov and had gone into temporary administration the previous week. Operations in another of Antonov's banks, Latvijas Trajbanka, I don't speak Latvian, so sorry, or Lithuanian, or any of them ones, I don't know where that's actually from, were suspended by Latvian authorities for similar reasons. Antonov was subsequently arrested at his offices in London on the 24th of November and was bailed. He shortly afterwards resigned as chairman of Portsmouth after parent company CSI entered administration. On the 24th of January 2012, Portsmouth were issued with a winding up petition by HMRC for over £1.6 million in unpaid taxes, which was heard on the 20th of February. On the 17th of February 2012, Portsmouth went into administration for the second time in 2 years, bringing them an automatic 10-point deduction. Administrator Trevor Birch incidentally now leader of the EFL, may have heard his name recently muted around the Derby County thing, admitted that the financial situation was worse than we first feared, and that Portsmouth was struggling to make the end of the season. On the 11th of April 2012, reports from administrators PKF revealed that Portsmouth owed £58 million and £38 million being owed to UHY Hackett Young. £10.5 million investments made by Vladimir Antonov's CSI remained outstanding. Players were due £3.5 million in wages and bonuses for the last 2 seasons, while £2.3 million was owed to HMRC, and additionally £3.7 million was owed for general trade. On the 21st of April, Portsmouth were relegated from the Championship after a 2-1 loss to Derby County, the first time in 30 years that the club had played at that level. Following Pompey's relegation to League One, the entire professional playing squad left the club. The team were given a 10-point deduction in December 2012 for their financial problems. On the 7th of December 2012, it was announced that Michael Appleton had left Portsmouth to become the manager of Blackpool. On the 9th of November 2012, Chan Ray halted his attempts to buy the club. 6 days later, the Pompey Supporters Trust signed a conditional agreement with PKF to buy the club. Portsmouth were unable to find a manager on a long-term basis due to their financial state. The club went on a record winless run of 23 matches, finally ending on the 2nd of March 2013 as Portsmouth won 2-1 away at Crewe Alexandra. On the 10th of April 2013, a deal with administrators was reached. Although the Pompey Supporters Trust hadn't yet finalised the purchase, Portsmouth were relegated for the second successive season in League Two at the end of the season. On the 19th of April 2013, Portsmouth exited administration when the Pompey Supporters Trust deal to buy the club was completed. Port Vale, 2012. The club was issued with a winding up petition by HM Revenue and Customs on the 29th of February 2012. The club were by this time unable to pay tax bills, creditors or staff wages. The club had entered administration on the 9th of March. The club finally exited administration on the 20th of November 2012. Coventry City, 2013. Coventry, this is the first one I actually remember happening in my memory and not just from hearing other people about it. Coventry were relegated from the Championship, falling to the 3rd tier for the first time since 1964. Faced with large losses, Sisu had responded by selling many of the club's top stars, such as Danny Fox and Scott Dan, while failing to agree new terms with out-of-contract players, including Marlon King and goalkeeper Kieran Westwood. Failure to replace them, as well as the team's tendency to concede last-minute goals and suffer vital losses to other teams facing relegation, ultimately led to their finish in the bottom 3. A consortium led by supporter Gary Hoffman attempted to buy the club, but despite the club's losses and their unpopularity with supporters, Sisu refused to sell, perhaps because they hoped to acquire ownership of the stadium in the future. In April 2012, Sisu defaulted on the rent owed to ACL, setting in motion a multi-year battle between the club and the stadium's owners. The club claimed that the annual rent of £1.2 million was too high for them and wouldn't be sustainable given their imminent drop to League One. In League One off the field, the rent row between Coventry City and ACL intensified, and the club's holding company went into administration in March. This resulted in 10 points being deducted by the Football League, and they finished that season in 15th. While the stadium row remained unresolved, the club announced that it would play its home games for the 2013-14 season at Sixfields Stadium in Northampton, 34 miles from Coventry, whilst planning for a new stadium in the Coventry area. Many supporters began a boycott of home games following this decision, with some travelling to Northampton during the games to protest against the club's owners, at a site which they dubbed Jimmy's Hill. The club began the season still in administration after failing to come to an agreement with ACL over a company voluntary arrangement. This triggered another 10-point deduction, but the Football League allowed the club to continue playing by agreeing to transfer its golden share to the administrator's preferred bidder, Otium Entertainment Group, a company majority owned by Sisu. In August 2013, Sisu applied for a judicial review into Coventry City Council's loan of the £14 million to ACL. This concluded in June 2014 with a decision that the deal didn't amount to the unlawful state aid. Sisu vowed to appeal. City began the 2014-15 season playing home games at Sixfield Stadium once more, but in mid-August they announced that they had reached an agreement with ACL to return to the Ricoh Arena for the next 2 seasons, with the option to then continue playing there for another 2. The other significant development during the season was the purchase of the Ricoh Arena by Wasps Rugby Football Club, a Premiership rugby union club previously based in High Wycombe. Wasps brought the holdings of both the City Council and the Higgs charity for £2.77 million each. The latter purchase proved controversial, as Higgs turned down a rival £2.8 million offer from Coventry City, despite the club holding the right of first refusal to purchase the Higgs estate. Throughout this period, Sisu were involved in legal battles regarding the council's involvement in the Ricoh Arena. They applied for permission to appeal against the 2014 judicial review decision, a process which eventually concluded at the Supreme Court in late 2016, with a ruling prohibiting allowing a full appeal. They then applied for a fresh judicial review, this time into the council's role in the sale of the stadium to Wasps by ACL. Sisu alleged that the deal undervalued the stadium by £30 million. This application was refused by the High Court in July 2017. Once again, Sisu sought permission to appeal this decision at the Court of Appeal. This appeal was allowed and was held in June 2018, but the court eventually ruled against them later that year, affirming the decision to deny the second judicial review. They asked the Supreme Court to intervene, but this was refused in April 2019. This led to them going playing in Birmingham City for a couple of seasons, but they are back at the Ricoh now and back on course. And things have seemed to smooth out a bit for Coventry. We are actually on the up. Aldershot Town, 2013. In the summer of 2012, a major shareholder suffered a major stroke, debilitating him and creating a financial insecurity just come the following year. In May 2013, Aldershot Town announced that they were in financial difficulties, with players' wages going unpaid. The chief executive, Andrew Mills, announced his resignation, saying that there was no evidence that the major shareholder, Chris Machala, had the ability to fund the club. Director Tony Knight admitted that the club had been hemorrhaging money. On the 2nd of May 2013, just 5 days after their relegation from the Football League, Aldershot officially entered administration. The club fell with debts of over £1 million. On the 1st of August 2013, Aldershot Town confirmed the takeover of the club by a consortium led by former chairman Shahid Azim. In conjunction, the club announced the agreement of a lucrative deal with Chelsea to host a significant number of matches played by the Chelsea Academy reserves over the next 2 years. Bolton Wanderers 2019. Bit of a jump there between clubs being in administration, isn't there? That's quite a good thing, actually. Throughout the 2018-19 Championship season, Bolton faced financial difficulties. On the 12th of September 2018, Bolton reached an agreement with their main creditor, Blue Marble Capital Limited, over an unpaid loan, avoiding an administration and a points deduction from the EFL. Bolton were served with a winding up order on the 27th of September 2018 after failing to make a payment to HM Revenue and Customs. This was the fourth such petition the club had faced in the previous 14 months. After the collapse of a permanent signing of on-loan striker Christian Doige, Forest Green Rovers commenced legal action over lost earnings. In February 2019, Bolton were again issued with a winding-up petition by HMRC, which subsequently adjourned until the end of the season as their search for a new owner continued. The match against Brentford on the 26th of April was called off by the English Football League 16 hours before kick-off, after Bolton's players, supported by the Professional Footballers Association, refused to play until they had received their unpaid wages. The EFL awarded the win to Brentford, and the Bolton Whites Hotel, owned by Ken Anderson, who was also issued with a winding-up petition in March 2019. It closed on the 1st of May and went into administration on the 14th of May. The team was relegated to League One in April after a 23rd place finish. In May 2019, the club went into administration due to a £1.2 million unpaid tax bill, incurring a 12-point penalty for the 2019-20 season. Phil Draw, former owner Eddie Davis's trust fund, appointed administrators from insolvency firm David Rubin and Partners. A 17th of July statement from Bolton players said that no one at the club had been paid by owner Ken Anderson for 20 weeks. The training ground had no portable drinking water nor hot water for showers. Pre-season friendlies were cancelled as Bolton could not give assurances about fielding a competitive team. Anderson failed to find a buyer before the start of the season, and Bolton started their opening League One game on the 3rd of August at Bolton Wanderers with only 3 contracted senior outfield players and lost 2-0. A week later, Bolton fielded its youngest ever side with an average age of 19 in a goalless home draw against Coventry City. Manager Phil Parkinson expressed concern about the welfare of the youth players used in all of Bolton's games, leading to Bolton to postpone the game against Doncaster Rovers on the 20th of August without informing either Doncaster or the EFL. Parkinson and assistant Steve Parkin resigned the following day, with academy manager Jimmy Phillips taking interim charge. On the 26th of August, it was announced that the takeover by Football Ventures had fallen through one day before the EFL deadline, potentially risking the club going into liquidation. After Bolton failed to meet that deadline, the suspension of its notice of withdrawal from the EFL was lifted. However, the club was not immediately expelled from the EFL. It was given until the 12th of September 2019 to meet all outstanding requirements of the league's insolvency policy. On the 28th of August, Bolton announced that the club's sale to Football Ventures Whites Limited had been completed, with the administrator paying tribute to the Eddie Davis Trust and their legal team, and criticising Ken Anderson, who had used his position as a secured creditor to hamper and frustrate any deal that did not benefit him or suit his purposes. Days later, Keith Hill was announced as the new club manager. Right, this one's quite a long one, but quite a hard one for quite a lot of people. Bury Football Club 2019. Businessman Steve Dale bought the club from Stuart Day for £1 in December 2018, and in February 2019 paid an outstanding tax bill to avoid a HM Revenue and Customs winding up order. However, financial problems resurfaced on the 2nd of April after staff and players didn't receive their March salaries on time. On the 10th of April, former head coach Chris Brass, claiming to be a creditor of the club, issued a winding-up petition to be heard in a High Court amid the EFL's extreme concern about the club's situation. There's a doubt whether the home game against Colchester United on the 13th of April would be played. On the 12th of April, the club said the outstanding wage bill would be settled within the next 7 days. Meanwhile, the winding-up petition was adjourned until the 15th of May after the end of the league season. In addition to Brass's claim, HMRC was claiming approximately £277,000. On the 25th of April, Dale said the club's financial problems were far in excess of what he understood when he took over, and placed the club on the open market. Around £1.6 million was needed to pay wages, HMRC and pensions to the end of May, with only 180,000 income expected during that period. On the 19th of June, a High Court hearing on the winding up petition was adjourned until the 31st of July to allow additional time for a potential sale. To secure the club's future, Dale promised the CVA to ensure payment of the club's football creditors in full, while unsecured creditors, including HMRC, would receive 25% of monies owed. That was approved by creditors on the 18th of July. As a result, the winding up petition was dismissed by the High Court on the 31st of July. Under EFL rules, a CVA is an insolvency event and left the club liable to a 12-point deduction ahead of the 2019-20 season. Bury's preparation for the new season was further impacted by the loss of manager Ryan Lowe and several members of the first team. On the 25th of July, the EFL sought further details on how Bury would satisfy the CVA without proof of the club's financial viability. Bury could be expelled from the EFL. Satisfactory proof wasn't provided, and on the 29th of July, the club's opening league match of the season against MK Dons was suspended, as were 4 further league games. An EFL Cup tie was cancelled and awarded to Sheffield Wednesday. On the 8th of August, Bury was given 14 days to provide the EFL with a plan to pay off outstanding creditors. The EFL repeatedly insisted it was working with the club to try and resolve the problems, but Bury faced expulsion if financial order could not be restored by the 23rd of August. On the 12th of August, Dale said he would consider selling the club after staff implored him to accept a newly received offer to buy the club. But on the 20th of August, he rejected a deal that would have secured the survival of the club, believing he could get a better offer. Bury North MP James Frith wrote to EFL Chair Debbie Jeavons asking for the expulsion deadline to be extended. Andy Burnham, the Mayor of Greater Manchester, also requested an extension. On the 22nd of August, the EFL gave an extra 48 hours to avoid expulsion after it emerged that 4 parties were interested in a takeover. Late on the 23rd of August, Dale was said to have agreed a sale to analytics company CNN Sporting Risk. The following morning, an EFL board meeting gave Bury until 5 o'clock on the Tuesday the 27th of August to complete the sale, though Jeavons later said a further short extension might be granted if the sale was very close to conclusion. Shortly before the deadline, however, CNN Sporting Risk pulled out of the deal, saying it was unable to proceed. At around 11 o'clock on the 27th of August, the EFL announced that Bury's membership of the league had been withdrawn. Bury were the first club to be expelled from the Football League since Maidstone United in 1992. You can go and see the previous, I think it's the part 1, I think I said about that, to find out more about them. After the expulsion, it emerged that a late bid from a Brazilian potential buyer had been rejected. The Insolvency Practitioners Association said it would investigate Bury's CVA over allegations that Dale had tried to engineer a payout to a newly formed company, RCR Holdings, run by his daughter's partner, and 140 youth players were released by Bury's academy. On the 30th of August, Bury was actively considering legal action against the EFL over its expulsion. After local MP James Frith said he would propose that the EFL reinstate Bury in League 2 in 2020-21, the EFL said it would consult members. The EFL also announced an independent review of EFL regulations concerning financial sustainability of member clubs, which in February 2020 concluded that any additional EFL action would not have made any difference to the eventual outcome. A lack of owner funding ultimately caused Bury's demise. Exasperated, if I could even read, by excessive wages paid to players under Day's chairmanship. Meanwhile, Greater Manchester Police confirmed it was investigating a fraud allegation made in 2019 in relation to Bury's finances. By the way, when I said Day, I think I was pretty meant to say Dales. Is it Dale? I am no. Yeah. don't know why I've put that. So the Frith led working group's proposal to admit Bury to League Two, backed by Bury FC Supporters Trust, Bury South MP Evan Lewis, Andy Burnham, the Greater Manchester Combined Authority, and Bury Metropolitan Borough Council, was sent to the EFL on the 20th of September, but was rejected at a meeting of the EFL's remaining 71 clubs on the 26th of September, following the EFL ruling. The working group suggested that Bury apply for a place in the National League in 2020-21, subject to the ownership and financial issues being resolved. Another winding up petition was brought before the High Court by HMRC on the 16th of October 2019. It was adjourned for 14 days to allow the club more time to settle with small business creditors. Everton chairman Bill Kenwright attempted to buy Bury £1 million to help save the club, but this was disallowed under EFL conflict of interest rules. On the 30th of October, the petition adjournment was extended for another 35 days to the 4th of December, after the club argued that it continued to automatically pay taxes on unpaid taxes. The judge agreed that an extension was necessary for HMRC to establish the club had overpaid. On the 4th of December, the club was granted a further extension until the 18th of December, with HMRC ordered to process the club's returns and ascertain the exact amount still owed when the High Court reconvened. This winding up petition was dismissed by HMRC, said an unspecified debt had been paid, as was a winding up petition on the 5th of February 2020. So despite not having a league to play in, Bury still technically exist. 3 plans emerged during the December of 2019. A group of fans formed a new club, Bury AFC, and applied to the Northwest Counties Football League for membership in 2020-21, which was approved in February 2020. Entrepreneur Robert Benwell was reported to be seeking to resurrect Bury, but it was unclear if he would attempt to buy the original club. The consortium was looking to complete a solvent takeover of the club. On the 31st of January 2020, the club was in danger of liquidation, as Dale had failed to pay any money to creditors under the terms of the July 2019 CVA. Dale had to pay at least £2 million by the 11th of February, or the CVA would be ended. Debts totalling around £5 million will become immediately due, with creditors able to petition for the club to be wound up. On the 14th of February, Dale was reported to have defaulted on the plan to settle outstanding debts, casting fresh doubt over Bury's future and making liquidation more likely. A month later, on the 16th of March 2020, Dale was reported to be seeking a new CVA, though this following a formal notice that the previous CVA had been terminated on the 9th of March. The supervisor of that initial CVA, Stephen Wiseglass, warned that if no new CVA is agreed by the 1st of April, he would seek to wind up the club and appoint a liquidator. The consortium attempt to complete a solvent takeover of the club fell through at the end of March. In late April, Dale was reported to have spent £250,000 in appointing a QC to lead a legal claim for damages against the EFL and to have applied to the FA for a place in the National League or National League North in the 2020-21 season. However, on the 7th of August, the application was rejected by the FA, who cited the club's financial resources, ownership, and insolvency status. The club said it planned to submit an application for the 2021-22 season, but none was sent. On the 30th of August 2020, 12 months after the club's EFL expulsion, the Manchester Evening News said Bury FC still exists, though if only on paper, with no players, no league to play in, and no employees to speak of. It is little more than a hollow shell of the club's fans knew and love. And the MEN report said that the club continues to limp on, but its future was uncertain and the danger of liquidation remained. Though most fans hoped for the eventual resurrection. Meanwhile, Dale began making statements on the EFL website, branding the fan-owned Bury AFC as fake. Bury AFC had arranged a ground share deal with nearby Radcliffe and begun the 2020-21 season in Division 1 North of the NWCFL. Although, to be fair, some recent news to come out, which is quite good for Bury, is that £1 million has been given by the government to Bury Borough Council, I think it is, to buy this, or maybe it's for Bury fans, to buy the stadium that is it Gig Lane? I think it's Gig Lane. So they could try and at least alleviate some of the debt potential that Bury would have to pay and obviously supply a home for them. So that is good news. Wigan Athletic 2020. On the 4th of June 2020, IEC sold the majority of Wigan Athletic shareholdings to Hong Kong-based Next Leader Fund. The sale was formally ratified and approved by the shareholders of the IEC, the Hong Kong Stock Exchange, and the EFL. So, on the 1st of July 2020, the club standing 14th in the Championship, 8 points clear of relegation, in a season delayed due to COVID-19 pandemic, announced it had gone into administration, as Next Leader Fund had refused to invest promised money. Paul Stanley, Gerald Krasner, and Dean Watson, Von Begby's trainer, were appointed as joint administrators. The insolvency left Wigan facing a 12-point deduction. The sanction would be applied at the end of the 2019-20 season if the club finished outside the bottom three after 46 games. On the 2nd of July 2020, the administrators said they would investigate how the club ended up in administration less than a month after it changed owners. A private conversation about Wigan's situation involving EFL chairman Rick Parry was secretly filmed amid talk of betting on Wigan being relegated, described by some as the greatest sporting scandal of modern times. Wigan MP Lisa Nandy and Greater Manchester Mayor Andy Burnham, he's certainly getting his work out, isn't he, wrote a joint letter to Parry calling for an investigation into the club's takeover. Players hadn't been paid, and there was talk of club staff being made redundant and of players being offered for sale. They said, that's what the people who were singing said. So Wigan Supporters Club also called for an investigation and for financial support from the EFL. Supporters backed by Nandy later launched an online petition to try and trigger a parliamentary debate around the EFL's owners and directors test. On the 4th of July, Wigan, previously unbeaten in 9 games, lost 3-0 at Brentford. 3 days later, on the 7th of July, around half of the club's 75, which was around half of the club's non-playing staff, were made redundant by the administrators. And Wigan Warriors expressed interest in buying the football club, a move later supported by Wigan Council. On the 10th of July, midfielder Jensen Weir was set to be sold to Brighton and Hove Albion for £500,000 plus add-ons to help alleviate Wigan's financial problems. England under-16 international midfielder Alfie Devine was later sold to Tottenham. Bids were due by the 21st of July. On the 22nd of July, the days of Wigan's final game of the season, Krasner said the administrators had received 5 offers and identified an unnamed preferred bidder. They were seeking completion of the sale by the 31st of July. However, on the 24th of July, talks with a preferred bidder broke down, and administrators began negotiations with other parties, which continued into early August. Meanwhile, on the 7th of July 2020, the club had appealed against the 12 points deduction imposed by the EFL for entering administration. On the 14th of July, Wigan recorded their biggest league victory, beating Hull City 8-0. This, combined with other results, meant Wigan wouldn't finish in the relegation places, so the 12-point deduction would be applied at the end of the current season. Wigan's appeal against the points deduction, heard on the 31st of July, was set to cost the club between £400,000 and £500,000. Wigan drew 1-1 against Fulham in their final game of the season. The 12-point deduction pushed Wigan into the bottom three, meaning the club would play in League One if its appeal was unsuccessful. On the 4th of August, the club's relegation was confirmed, and following the resignation of manager Paul Cook, Liam Richardson was appointed caretaker manager. On the 17th of August 2020, it was reported that Oyeungway K, the club's owner, had on the 23rd of June asked Begbie's trainer about putting it into administration before completing his takeover. Begbie's trainer disputed the account produced by an independent commission, saying administration was one of several scenarios discussed. The commission said Cray was not open with Wigan officials about his conversation with Begbie's trainer, and subsequently gave either false or knowingly misleading assurances about future funding. The administrator was still attempting to find a buyer. If no agreement was reached by the 31st of August, Begbie's trainer said it would have to consider whether the club could be funded into the 2020-21 season. Due to the start on Saturday the 12th of September 2020, so on the 20th of August, Kay was reported to be waiving a £36 million debt owed to him by the club in an effort to expedite its sale. Wigan supporters began a fundraising effort, initially raising £500,000 to help secure the club's future, and then raising £200,000 more. Administrators had been confident a sale would be agreed by their deadline, but later revised their opinion. On the 9th of September 2020, with the club's situation said to be discussed at an EFL meeting, the administrators were reportedly quietly optimistic about Wigan being allowed to start the EFL season despite being ownerless. They appointed John Sheridan as the club's new manager, who was in charge as Wigan lost their first league game of the season 2-0 at Ipswich Town. On the 21st of September, the administrators reported the bids would need to top £3 million to secure the club secure the sale, as the club had a considerable liability to HM Revenues and Customs, owed wages to players, and also had to pay for August's unsuccessful appeal against the points deduction. On the 30th of September, the administration said they had reached an agreement with an unnamed bidder from Spain to purchase the club, and were working on paperwork to gain EFL approval. In early November, former Wigan manager Roberto Martinez was reported to assisting with the Spanish bid. On the 13th of November, after 3 wins with 15 Wigan games, manager Sheridan left to become Swindon Town's new manager. On the 25th of November, additional time was granted to the prospective new owners to complete their purchase. In early December, with the club bottom of League One, it emerged that a member of the Spanish consortium had a disqualifying condition, so Wigan's administrators had to make a fresh application to the EFL on behalf of Felipe Moreno, owner of Spanish La Liga DOS side Leganes. However, on the 5th of January 2021, the Moreno takeover bid fell through. Administrators began talking to other bidders, with on the 15th of January, 11 parties said to be interested in buying the club. By March 2021, the administration were in advanced talks with a consortium, Phoenix 2021 Limited, led by Bahrain businessman Talal Mubarak Al Hamad. And a takeover was agreed on the 15th of March, subject to EFL approval and finalisation of paperwork. Under the proposed deal, Al Hamad would become chairman, and Mal Brannigan, previously involved with Dundalk and Dundee United, would be chief executive. EFL approval for the takeover was confirmed on the 30th of March 2021. In May, the former administrators repaid £171,000 raised by supporters to keep the club going when it first went into administration. The club finished the 2020-21 season in 20th position, 1 point above relegation places. Macclesfield Town, 2020. In early 2019, off-the-pitch financial issues meant players weren't paid for 3 months, with some players threatening to boycott the Cambridge game. 6 players issued a winding-up order against the club, which was taken over by HM Revenue and Customs in September. But the High Court hearing was adjourned 10 times. I'm getting tired by doing this. A hearing on the 25th of March 2020 was then postponed due to the COVID-19 pandemic to the 17th of June, and was adjourned for a 10th or 11th time, to the 9th of September 2020. Campbell left the club by mutual consent on the 15th of August 2019, with Daryl McMahon taking over as manager. Campbell later backed the HMRC winding-up bid, claiming to be owed £180,000. In October 2019, the players again went unpaid, seeking help from the EFL, which in November began a formal investigation into the club's failure to pay its players. A strike by first-team players over the unpaid wages jeopardised Macclesfield's FA Cup first-round tie against non-league Kingstonian at the Moss Rose on the 9th of November 2019. But the club fulfilled the fixture, fielding 6 youth team players and 5 loanees, losing the tie 4-0 amid protests from Macclesfield supporters, many of whom boycotted the game. Meanwhile, local businessman Joe Seeley, son of former Manchester United goalkeeper Les Seeley, said he wanted to buy the club, though the takeover later on the 21st of November stalled. On the 14th of November 2019, Macclesfield was charged with misconduct by the EFL and referred to a disciplinary panel after failing to pay players. As some players remained unpaid, they said they wouldn't play in the 16th of November League 2 fixture against Mansfield Town unless paid by 6 p.m. on the 15th of November. Most were paid, so the game went ahead. 2 weeks later, Macclesfield players again told the club's owner that they wouldn't train or play on the 7th of December against Crewe Alexandra if wages weren't paid. The game was officially suspended on the 6th of December, with the EFL triggering further disciplinary action. On the 19th of December, the EFL docked Macclesfield 6 points, with a further 4 points deduction suspended over this infraction. But after a January 2020 arbitration panel upheld a lenient penalty imposed on Bolton Wanderers for not fulfilling 2 2019 fixtures, Macclesfield Town appealed against its points deduction, and the deduction was reduced to 4 points, with 3 suspended. The 21st of December fixture against Plymouth Argyle was then postponed due to a Moss Rose ground safety issue. The EFL again charged the club with misconduct for failing to fulfil its fixture obligations. Meanwhile, Macclesfield supporters set up a hardship fund, raising over £11,000 to support short-term financial emergency support for players and non-playing staff, fearing the club could follow Bury AFC into extinction, and blaming owner Ammar Al-Khadi, he claimed to be in advanced negotiations with various third parties over a possible takeover of the club, and on the 15th of January 2020 said a bid to buy the club had been accepted in principle. The key word being in principle, that is. Frustrated by the club's financial position, with December's pay arriving late, manager McMahon resigned after 4 months in charge on the 2nd of January 2020, joining Dagenham and Redbridge the following day, along with assistant Steve Gritt. After Danny Whitaker took temporary charge on the 16th of January 2020, Mark Kennedy was appointed head coach. On the 29th of February, 3 Macclesfield players approached the EFL and had their contracts terminated ahead of the transfer deadline. Club staff wages for February were also not paid on time, leading the PFA to contact the club. On the 9th of March, the club was charged with misconduct by the EFL for failing to pay players on time, as referred to an independent disciplinary commission after failing to fulfil the Crewe and Plymouth fixtures. In April 2020, it was reported the club hadn't paid its players for a 5th time. failing to pay March's wages, and later for the first team, backroom staff and most office staff had been put on furlough due to the COVID-19 pandemic. In May 2020, the club was given a 7-point deduction, with a further 2-point deduction suspended for failing to fulfill the Plymouth fixture in December 2019, and for failing to pay players' wages. After the Silkman Supporters Trust provided a loan of £10,000 to help towards the payment of players' wages for April, further misconduct charges were brought by the EFL on the 1st of June, relating to late payment of salaries in March. These latest charges left Macclesfield at risk of relegation, as on the 9th of June, an EFL EGM agreed outstanding promotion and relegation issues with ongoing disciplinary matters, meaning Macclesfield could go down in place of Stevenage if further point deductions were made. Continued uncertainty ahead of the disciplinary hearing on the 19th of June 2020 was reported to be affecting the mental health of the club's players and staffs, and having an impact on the club's potential sale to Joe Seeley, who said he would only be interested if EFL status was retained. On the 1st of June, Macclesfield received a 2-point deduction, retaining the club's League 2 status, along with a 4-point deduction and a £20,000 fine plus costs. However, on the 3rd of July, the EFL said it would appeal against the independent disciplinary panel's sanctions on Macclesfield. The hearing was set for the 11th of August 2020. In the meantime, the club provided the EFL with a robust business plan showing sustainable future financial and management resources. And on the 4th of August, Chairman Amar Al-Khadi resigned his position. On the 11th of August 2020, the club was relegated to the National League following the EFL's appeal. The suspended 4-point deduction was activated, dropping Macclesfield to the bottom of the table and depriving Stevenage. The following day, manager Mark Kennedy and his assistant resigned. On the 9th of September 2020, the High Court granted Macclesfield a 7-day extension to a winding-up petition over unpaid tax to give time for a possible take of the club by Robert Benwell, previously linked with a move to Bury FC. If a takeover said to be at an advanced stage fell through, current owner Amar Al-Khadi said outstanding debt would be paid to HMRC, which was owed at £188,721.09, with 8 creditors owed £592,000. On the 16th of September 2020, the High Court made a winding-up order against the club, pushing the club into liquidation. Judge Sebastian Prentice made the order after receiving no evidence relating to the club's sale or satisfactory evidence of the club's ability to pay creditors, saying nothing gives me comfort that the club can pay its debts in a reasonable period. The Silkman Supporters Trust were reported to be exploring what actions they could take to save the club, and to be seeking a meeting with the receiver. However, on the 29th of September 2020, the club was suspended by the National League, and its first 3 scheduled games were postponed, pending a notice of expulsion taking effect from the 12th of October 2020. The club's final match was a 2-1 victory in a friendly match at Cheshire neighbours Witton Albion on the 15th of September 2020. On the 13th of October 2020, the official receiver confirmed that the assets of Macclesfield Town had been sold to Mac Football Club Limited. Local businessman and owner of 10th tier Stockport Town, Robert Smethurst, had purchased the assets, including establishing a new club at Macclesfield Football Club and enter the Northwest Counties Football League in the 2021-22 campaign. Former Wales international Robbie Savage, now a Stockport Town player, joined the club's board, and former Town manager Danny Whitaker became team manager. Bury, I know I've already said Bury, but you're back in it with 2020. On the 27th of November 2020, Dale placed the club into administration, with Wiseglass appointed administrator. In January 2021, a Nottinghamshire-based businessman and investor in Ilkeston Town, David Hilton, was reported to be interested in buying Bury FC, which was said to have debts of over £15 million. In May 2021, The club's Gig Lane ground was put up for sale by the administrator. In June, Wiseglass said he had received 2 ultimately unsuccessful offers by the club, and that a deadline of the 5th of August had been set for bids to buy Gig Lane. He also confirmed in an update to the administration records filed at Company's House that the club's total liability amounted to £12,545,559. On the 26th of August, Wiseglass said offers had been received from several interested parties with a fans-backed group, Est 1885, amongst the bidders to buy the ground and the club. Supported by local MPs James Daly and Christian Wakeford, and by Bury MBC, the Est 1885 bid was backed by an anonymous benefactor willing to bankroll ambitions for a fans-led club. On the 22nd of October, the administrators confirmed that Est 1885 had been given exclusivity to buy both the club and Gig Lane, with both hopes of completing the deal before 2022. The benefactor was reported to be English-born but now California-based businessman Peter Alexander, a lifelong Shakers fan who also wanted to reconcile any differences with the Phoenix club Bury AFC. On the 23rd of December 2021, the UK government, through the Community Ownership Fund run by the Department for Levelling Up, Housing and Communities, pledged £1 million towards the bid to buy back Gig Lane. So I'm actually getting some good things. And finally, probably what most of you have been waiting for with this video is me rambling on about Derby County and their administration of 2021. Well, in 2014-15, local businessman Mel Morris assumed ownership of the club. Morris initially oversaw a level of spending unprecedented in Derby's history, breaking the club's transfer record 4 times in his first 3 years. But also oversaw an equally unprecedented managerial turnover with 9 managers in 6 years from June 2015. In this period, the club endured 3 unsuccessful playoff campaigns, failing in the semi-finals twice and losing in the 2019 final to Aston Villa. In May 2021, the club, now managed by Wayne Rooney, narrowly avoided relegation to League One. Earlier in October 2020, it was announced that Morris was intending to sell the club and was actively seeking new owners. A potential deal with a Middle Eastern-backed company was discontinued in March 2021, after which an agreed sale to a Spanish businessman, Eric Alonso, also fell through, after doubts about Alonso's funding emerged, alongside possible EFL sanctions regarding breaches of financial fair play regulations. A deduction of 9 points remained under consideration. In mid-September 2021, on the 8th of July 2021, the EFL imposed a transfer embargo on the club, leaving Rooney with a squad of just 9 contracted senior professionals. However, the EFL later relaxed the embargo, but said any deals will have strict wage limits. Following a long-term injury to Colin Kazim-Richards in the early stage of the 2021-22 season, the club were giving special dispensation by the EFL to bring in veteran defender Phil Jagielka and striker Sam Bullock. On the 17th of September 2021, the club's board of directors announced that the club was to go into administration. The EFL confirmed Derby would face a 12-point deduction, having invested in excess of £200 million in the club. Owner Mel Morris apologised to fans and staff about the administration. Relegated in May 2021, former Championship club Bolton Wanderers considered legal action against Derby County, following the administrator's announcement. On the 22nd of September 2021, the club formally went into administration and deducted 12 points, leaving them bottom of the Championship. But the administrator subsequently appealed against the automatic point deduction. An appeal hearing was adjourned on the 8th of November. During October and November 2021, former Derby owner Andy Appleby, US businessman Chris Kirchner, and Sandy and James Easdale were named as interested parties as administrators looked for a buyer for the club, planning to shortlist 3 preferred bidders by the end of 2021. However, a quick sale was unlikely pending discussions with HMRC and confirmation of the full extent of Derby's liabilities. On the 16th of November 2021, the club had a further deduction of 9 points for breaching EFL accounting rules, leaving the club on -3, 18 points from safety. A further 3-point deduction for breaches of EFL profitability and sustainability rules was suspended. On the 20th of November 2021, Derby and related companies were reported to owe £29.3 million to HMRC. Other liabilities included £20 million from US investment group MSD Holdings, plus various football and trade creditors at around £15 million. The following day, administrators said they hope to identify a preferred buyer in the next 2 to 3 weeks, with Kirchner the only potential buyer to have publicly confirmed his interest. On the 2nd of December 2021, after press speculation that the club might go into liquidation due to the scale of its debts, Rooney insisted this wasn't an option. On the 18th of December 2021, he said 3 bids had been received and a preferred bidder should be announced by Christmas. The administrators hoped to complete the sale in or around February 2022. On the 24th of December 2021, Kirchner withdrew his bid to buy the club. Then, on the 7th of January 2022, former Newcastle United owner Mike Ashley was reported interested in buying the club. On the 14th of January 2022, with no immediate prospect of Derby County's purchase, this was hampered by the legal actions involving Middlesbrough and Wycombe, the EFL gave the administrators until the 1st of February 2022 to provide information about how they intended to fund the club until the end of the season. As fears about an EFL expulsion and liquidation grew, local MPs Amanda Soloway and Andrew Bridgen planned to raise the matter with Sports Minister. The Middlesbrough and Wycombe claims, if proved, could leave Derby with liabilities running into millions, as football debts needed to be paid in full. Potential purchasers, therefore, and most of them, as I'm concerned, are still unwilling to commit to buying the club. As a result, the BBC reported on the 17th of January 2022 that Derby's administrators could seek a legal ruling that the claims do not fall within the normal football-related agreements over issues such as transfer fees and ticket sales. Middlesbrough subsequently said they were willing to discuss a possible compromise. On the 20th of January 2021, the club's administrators 2022, I think that's meant to say. The club's administrators committed to providing the EFL with funding information within days, after the EFL said the club will run out of cash by February. The following day, another bid to buy the club from founders of US investment company Carlyle Capital was reported, but the £28 million offer did not include the stadium, against which MSD Holdings loan is secured. So what do I make of all of this, seeming it does involve my beloved Derby County? Well, I think it's quite interesting. I think Mel obviously ran out of money and a gamble which didn't work. So, I mean, he is mainly to blame here. But I do actually see that he's doing all right stuff at the moment. He's not demanding that he get paid anything back, as far as I'm concerned. He's not demanding rent as much from Pride Park, potentially up to selling that as well. And I think he's not doing too much tampering progress. The problem I have at the moment is with Wycombe and Middlesbrough. Their claims, absolutely unreasonable. There's no way that they could actually prove, but without us spending or tweaking the rules, that they would have got it. I mean, Middlesbrough, they were on a 6-game losing streak or something like that for the end of the season with the playoffs. So the likelihood of actually have got in the playoffs, not very tenable at all. And the fact that they'd actually go on and win it, even less. I mean, they only drew against Leeds twice that season, so they could have passed Leeds. But Aston Villa, they had an average score of 6-0 across the season, so probably not likely to submit into the final. So where they've come with that from is absolutely ridiculous. I mean, Middlesbrough have been in administration themselves, have been in this problem themselves, and they should probably know much better than to try and force a club into liquidation. Wycombe equally probably don't have that much claim to have. They were promoted by the playoffs on a dubious points to the game system, but because they had a game in hand, if they won the game in hand against Coventry, which is very unlikely because they went on to win the league on that points per game system, it would mean that they would have got 3.6 or 3.7 points for the win on that points per game system, and obviously that's not how it works. So it's a bit dodgy that as well. And also, the fans of these clubs, I have to say, absolutely amazing that most of them have come out and said, just drop the case. We don't want to see another Bury. We don't want to see another club get forced out of existence. So thanks a lot for that. I do support all of the fans, and thank you for all of them who are doing that. And for those who have signed a petition wanting the sports minister to investigate it, I think it's illegal to have a court claim against someone in administration. It also seems very unreasonable what they're doing, just trying to hit a dog when it's already down, to try and get just financial compensation because their losses from COVID. Well, I mean, take this as a hypothetical example, right? Derby were in 1986 in 5th place. Now, in 1986, all English football teams couldn't participate in Europe because of a Hazel Stadium disaster. So do Derby therefore have the right to say, well, we lost out on the income because of Liverpool fans causing riots? It wasn't Derby fans which caused England teams to be banned. So should we therefore go and force the Liverpool to go and pay us millions of pounds? We could have gone and won the UEFA Cup and then gone and won the Champions League next year and become an established top 6 club and get billions of pounds a year. Or do we go and do the same with QPR and Aston Villa, who were proven to have broken, both of them have been proven to have broken EFL spending regulations and FFP when they got promoted, when they beat Derby in the playoffs? It sets a very dangerous, messy precedent, what Middlesbrough are claiming for. And I just don't believe that is ethically right. So I think they're most likely to drop the claims. I'm quite happy to see that at least one of the bidders now is actually saying, even if it does go against Derby's way, which is unlikely to do if it does end up in a court, they'd still end up paying off the thing. Thanks, Carlisle. I think I'd like to see you as new owners, actually, because you're actually acting reasonable with the club's interest at heart. EFL, also quite suspicious of at the moment. They seem to have said when Middlesbrough tried to sue them, they're like, no, it's not us. We're going to sue Derby. Derby have already been punished for this, as I already said. They've got a 21 points deduction this season with 3 points suspended. Already had transfer embargoes. Most likely to be relegated. It hurts me to say that. You could pull off a ridiculous, and that's probably why they've got these things against us. I don't think if Derby was still 18 points off safety, then there would be anywhere near as much as these claims against Derby County to get them worse off in a situation. So I think it's just a bit of bitterness. I mean, at the moment, if you look where Middlesbrough and Wycombe are, Middlesbrough in the playoffs, they're in 6th place, so they have a chance to get in the Premier League. Wycombe are 1st place in League One, so they've not really got a lot to complain about. They're probably going to reap the income within a season of what they're already wanting from Derby. So that's just my thoughts. I've been going on for way too long. Please subscribe if you are new around here. I've got a history of your club. Hull City, they've got new owners. So see what the old ownership was like and why Hull fans are probably rejoicing now that they've got new ones. On Monday, I think I might have one more video before the... Yes, there's one more video before the transfer window closes. I'm not entirely sure what I'm going to do with that yet. But I'll think of something. Goodbye for now.